Well, there you go, boys and girls. In the last episode, you of course saw us clinch the title, go up as champions. So what I wanted to bring to you today is something slightly different from what we've done, a little bit off of the usual tune of what we put out. So I wanted to show you a deep dive into the tactics that I've used here at Oxford City in order to obviously secure promotion from the National League North and of course from the National League itself. And of course, how we managed to tweak things last season to really get the most out of Hugill, and of course, which then led to us having that promotion charge. Hopefully it's something that you like. I thought I'd obviously tweak it a little bit different and show you guys something a little bit different. Don't worry, it won't affect the usual scheduling for the other Rags to Riches series. This is just almost like a little bit of a bonus to have on the side. And of course, you've already seen all of the new arrivals, so I won't go into a deep dive into them right now. If you do want to see, of course, the new stars and specific deep dives into their stats, do click that link above my head to obviously be able to do that. But without further ado, let's get into that deep dive into the tactics and just show you how we've managed to pull off a pretty much masterclass over the last 3 seasons with securing 2 promotions. So here we are. You already know the team sheet. Of course, if you're a long-time viewer of the series, you are very familiar with these players here, and the new ones you would have already seen a little bit of information on. But let's go through it in position to position. Like I said, obviously it's a 4-2-3-1, as you know, that I've set up as, and we've kept that pretty consistent, right? The only changes that we do make from time to time is by dropping the cam into a more sort of defensive position, if you like. Right, so if we're playing a bigger opponent or a team that's higher up the table and we're expecting us to sort of be outpossessed in terms of obviously the ball and we're going to struggle to get chances, what I've done is sometimes drop McEachran into that sort of holding centre midfielder role, if you like. Not specifically holding, that's probably not the right terminology to use, because of course I've got Gromek and Murray Holmes that do that behind, but it just solidifies that midfield, gets them a little bit closer together, gets that three a little bit tighter so they can make little individual triangles that little bit quicker. But of course, I'll go through the individual positions on that, but I just wanted to quickly highlight that at the very beginning. So let's go back on combined. In terms of goalkeeper, it's pretty straightforward. I use a no-nonsense goalkeeper, and then I just use a line holding goalkeeper. I don't have any specific instructions for James Wright. As you can see here, it's very standard. I've passed in strategy just again as standard as well. So I haven't really tweaked much with regards to the actual goalkeeper position, because I think if you've got your passing mentality set up, which we'll go on to in a moment, they generally will follow that depending on what mentality that you're playing. Then it comes to the fullbacks, and this is where I do have some specific instructions that I like to do. So we've got Briggs here and we've got Killer Ferrari. Obviously, you're going to have different players, right? But in terms of how the formation works or how you can get the best out of your striker, more importantly, in this formation, these sort of go hand in hand with arguably any player. If you've got someone who is more equipped to playing a wing back, obviously you're going to get more out of them, right? Killer Ferrari gives me a much greater return than what Briggs does, or even Pinnington, who's the other right back that we use from time to time. But let's use Killer Ferrari as our example to start with. So I have them to stay wide. I want obviously each fullback staying as wide as possible. I don't want them coming in narrow. I want them to give us that extra width, and that plays into what we do with the wingers, depending again on what opposition that we're playing against and what type of opposition we're playing against, and we'll go on to that in a minute. In terms of dribbling direction, I always want to make sure that they're running out wide, okay? Making as much space as possible with the ball, keeping as many options available without us getting sort of penned in. Obviously, we're playing quite a flat back 6, I guess, if you want to call it. Of course, we have Gromek sitting in that defensive holding midfield role. We do have Murray Holmes pushing forward and as like a playmaker role. But if you like, we have obviously that 6 there that really they are obviously a solid rock when it comes to defending. So by keeping them dribbling out wide, it gives us just a little bit more space to play with. Dribbling frequency is standard. We don't do anything on that. Forward runs is already set because they're set as wing backs. In terms of shooting, I've got them to shoot less often. I don't want the wing backs getting in a position sort of on the edge of the box and trying a shot. For me, it's a wasted opportunity. I'd rather them being able to play that into the striker or the advanced playmaker or even the wingers to let them have that more natural ability in front of goal to try and take advantage of that. Passing risk is just standard. Again, I get that to mirror based on obviously our mentality and our passing style at that time. Passing strategy, again, exactly the same. And then this is quite important. So crosses from, I have my wing backs set up as crossing from deep. Okay, I don't have them crossing from the byline or just as standard. I really want Calafieri and Briggs or Pennington, whoever it may be, getting up the pitch to around here and then pinging them looped balls in. I don't want them running down here, taking our wingers space, right? Because if they get to here and the cross isn't on, they can usually work an overlap with a winger, then potentially get in behind, pass it back to the winger cuts in, has a shot or crosses it across for Hugill as an example. So like I said, I like to have them crossing from deep. It gives Hugill more chance to be able to either run in behind or of course win the ball in the air. And in terms of crossing strategy, I get them just to aim purely for the centre. And that goes in hand with what we want Hugill to do. Hugill is very much just get in the box, get in the middle of that box, hug that penalty spot if you like in that 6-yard box, and obviously make the most of the balls that come in. So that gives you an idea of our wing backs. Centre backs, very similar. Sometimes we'll play a no-nonsense centre back, depending on who we're playing. You know, in the earlier seasons, Chris Francis that we had was much better as a no-nonsense centre-back than a centre-back, but it's pretty straightforward in terms of what we have here. Again, the only things that I've got changed on here is I've got shooting less often. Again, I don't want Darnell Johnson or Declan Skara racing up the pitch, finding themselves in sort of nosebleed territory, so to speak, up here, and then trying a long-range effort. As much as it's great for the fans, right, it's not good for us potentially as a team. I'd rather us just get the ball into the players who we know can do the job with regards to scoring. Then we move on to Gromik as our centre defensive midfielder. Again, I haven't really tweaked much for this because his role as a DM is to just be a nuisance, right? He's just there to sit in place, make sure we're not obviously getting exposed, win that ball, then push forward. Again, I don't change his shooting stats or his passing risk or strategy because I'm quite happy with him just playing his natural game. There isn't really many chinks in his armor in terms of stats, which obviously you would have seen in previous episodes. But of course, if you want to see them again in more detail, feel free to check out the most recent episode as we'll go through all of the players, whether new or old, in a little bit more detail. And then alongside him, we've got Murray Holmes. So we play Murray Holmes as a deep lying playmaker. Reason why is, again, they're going to hold that position. They're not going to necessarily leave us exposed. We're still going to have that sort of foundation and that base of a 2 holding midfielder position. But what that does allow him to do is get his head up and ping them balls forward. He's going to basically be the pinpoint of them passes. And we've seen it last season with Joe Hugill, how many times he can ping that ball over the top. Joe Hugill runs onto it and manages to score. Even if he's not necessarily pinging the ball over the top, he's pinging it wide to the wingers or pinging it into McEachran's feet. So it's a very vital role in this formation and how I play it in terms of what I want him to do on and off the ball. Very much similar to Gromik. We have him not really much changed. Obviously, it's only going to be the changes that are based on his specific position. So as a deep line and playmaker, when we're in possession, he's going to make fewer runs forward and he's going to be taking more risks with them passing, which does pay off when you have a player like Hugill running on to the ball. In terms of moving up the pitch, we then have our wingers. Now, typically, as we've seen in the previous seasons, I very much like to play with inside wingers and inside forwards. Now, the reason that both of these are set to winger right now is because I'm not 100% sure where these players best fit. Right? They're both new into the club, so I'm going to fill them out in different positions and sort of play them in a different few positions. But what I'm going to do is show you from what I was usually doing last season in terms of obviously how we had it set up. Okay, so I would have one as an inside forward as an example, and I would have one as an inside winger. Now, you might be thinking, hang on a minute, that puts us very narrow up top. But remember, we have the wing backs that push up that give us that little bit of extra width. We're asking them to dribble wide as well. So before you know it, we'll have the wingers moving forward into their attacking positions. So it almost becomes a three-pronged attack with then the wing backs supporting them, long balls in. So it's not just Hugill potentially capitalising on that. And of course, if the cross isn't in, the deep cross, then we'll have the wingers on either side just outside of the penalty box. And that's where we thrive. We get a lot of overload in that middle of the box for us when we're attacking, which seems to be able to produce the results quite significantly. We've then, of course, got our attacking playmaker. Now, I have got a new person on the bench, which you would have seen in the last episode, who's probably taken this role, but they are currently injured, annoyingly so. So we do have McEachran as our main guy still going into this season. Very much standard. We're letting them play their own game. We're not dictating how we want them to play. We're not really going out and saying, right, you have to specifically do this or you have to specifically do that. I would rather them use their flair and let them take full advantage. And it seems to work with McEachran, right? He does wonders for us. He was one of the leading assisters and goal scorers in the first season. Come off the ball a little bit in the second season and the third season, but still come up with a lot of assists, maybe not as many goals as we would have liked. And then, of course, we've got the striker. So we've got Hugill. Now, we've got a little bit of different on here. What I want him to do, and Hugill to specifically do, is move into the channels, right? That's where I want him making them runs in behind, making them runs into space, because that's how, the wingers with the deep crosses, they're going to thrive off of that because he's going to constantly be looking for that run in behind. But also don't forget Murray Holmes, our deep line playmaker, again is going to thrive off of that because Hugill's role is just to constantly be making them runs in behind as and when he can see that space between the centre backs or the centre back and the full back. We've got him to shoot more often. I want him being our main guy, right? I want him being the main goal scorer in the club. So every time he's got a chance to shoot, I want him shooting. If his confidence is high, if he's scoring well, then we're going to be doing well like we saw last season. And then passing strategy, I've got that as shorter. I don't want him trying some long ball passes or passes that are too complicated. You know, he's a striker. He's there to score goals. He is not there to pass the ball and to assist. So I've just asked him to be short passes, short snappy, link with McEachran, link with them two wingers that are obviously cutting in, and then obviously thrive off of maybe a 1-2. So that gives you an idea in terms of our attacking formation. Okay. In terms of obviously when we are out of possession, it's very similar. You know, both in possession and out possession are the same. It's a 4-2-3-1. However, we do have it set up ever so slightly different. So we're going to go from back to front this time. So we've got Hugill out of position. We're not really asking him to do anything any different. Still in that centre forward role. We're just basically keeping it very standard for that. And then we've got McEachran out of position. He plays as an attacking midfielder. In terms of what we want him to do, again, very much similar. Not really changing much for McEachran at all, and that's because he uses his footballing brain so well. Now, again, we'll notice that the winger roles for these two new players into the club aren't really changed, but typically what I like to play is with tracking wingers. The reason why I like to play with the tracking wingers is it just drops them a little bit more flat, so it almost works out that we then play almost like a 4-4-1-1, if you like, when they're tracking back, and we have the fullbacks the wing backs in the attacking position. We have the wide defenders on fullback, as you can see, but we'll go on to that in a moment. In terms of what we specifically want them to do, doesn't really change. We still want them to sort of track back. Other than that, everything's very much similar in terms of the out of possession. We move to Gromek. Now, out of possession, he's again just playing as a defensive midfielder. And like I said, I didn't want him really changing anything. So it's very similar in terms of what we do here. Murray Holmes, again, very similar in terms of his out of possession stats. He's going to trigger the press a lot more often, though, because we're doing him as a pressing defensive midfielder. Okay, so his main role is to get forward, get involved, try and interrupt that pass to then be able to ping that off over to Hugill. As I've mentioned, we obviously then play both of the wing backs when we're attacking. We drop them back to full back, and again, no real change. Centre backs, no real change as well, as you can see. Nothing really different on here. And then in terms of goalkeeper, very much similar as well with regards to what we do. It's very similar. So in a defensive standpoint, I've not really tweaked with it much. And to be fair, I haven't really needed to, right? It does work having the tracking wingers. I think that helps us a lot. And having the two holding midfielders has helped us a lot. But don't forget, in the first season, we were I think we were the best, had the best defensive record. And in that third season just gone, again, we had the best defensive record as well. So we've always been a very solid unit. And that probably comes in more to our team instructions than anything else. So in terms of in possession, this is the team instructions that we use. So we set it as a higher tempo. We want them to obviously be passing that ball quicker and trying to obviously make the most of it. We don't want to just be sitting on the ball. We want to be moving it quickly, decisively, and get the ball forward as quick as possible. We go for a more direct passing because, of course, we want that to flourish with regards to the wing backs and Murray Holmes and even McEachran as an example. Standard on time wasting, standard on attacking transition. Attacking width, I keep that on standard because obviously I've got the wing backs specifically instructed to go wide and the wingers are cutting in. So I don't want to overload it with going wide on this as well. So we keep that as standard. Playing for set pieces, we don't really do that because we don't thrive off of set pieces, so we keep the ball in play. Creative freedom is obviously balance. Build up strategy, I want that to play through the press. So I want them to almost let the players come onto us, you know, let us be pressed and then we hit them. We beat that press, we've got a man over potentially, or we've got that space that we can go into. So that's why we play like that. Goal kicks, I want it to go short. Full confidence in my defense to be able to deal with it, and then we want it to go out to the flanks, so we either want it to go into the wing backs or into the wingers. Supporting runs, we leave it as balanced because of course we've already got the individual setups on that. Dribbling, we encourage the team to dribble. We progress through the flanks. We pass, obviously reception is unbalanced. Patience is standard. We discourage shots from distance. Crossing style is whipped crosses. Again, it's going to be floated crosses from the wing backs and it's going to be whipped crosses from the wingers because we ask them to get to the byline. And then goalkeeper distribution speed, we just do that as balanced. In terms of out of possession, mid block, high defensive line or a higher defensive line, we're triggering the press much more often, so we're being very aggressive in our press. We ask the players to then regroup when we're in a defensive transition. We want to just regroup, be compact, be solid and be hard to break down. I like to get them to stay on their feet. I don't want us to sort of get unnecessary yellow or red cards. Cross engagement, we keep it as balanced. We try to get them trapped inside, so we are trapping the players in that middle of the park where we have obviously the most players. We've got the two holding midfielders. We've got the centre attacking midfielder that tracks back as well. So it obviously gives us that little bit of an overload there. Short goalkeeper distribution. So we obviously want all of our forwards pressing the defensive line of the opponent and the goalkeeper. And defensive line behaviour, we've just got that as balanced. So we don't really change that. So that gives you an idea of what we play. I've just realised I didn't actually show you for the inside winger and the inside forward what I want that to do. So just to give you an idea, this is the inside winger. So we want them to stay much wider. We then want them to run wide with the ball as well. More obviously runs forward because I'm relying on them. I've asked them to obviously shoot less. Again, everything goes into Hugill, and that's obviously who we get to thrive. The wingers or the inside forwards, inside winger, however it may be, obviously it's still a winger position as such. We're getting them to cross from the byline, and they're obviously aiming for the centre again. Remember, that's obviously where Hugill is going to be. And then if I show you on the inside forward role, as an example, we have pretty much exactly the same. So getting them to stay wider, run wide, make more runs, shoot less often, cross from the byline, and then aim for the centre as well. So that gives you an idea of what our formation looks like. That gives you an idea of how we've gone up twice in 3 seasons. I hope you've enjoyed. Obviously it's something a little bit different, not something I always dig a little bit deeper into, so I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe obviously if you're new around here, and if you're seeing this just to look into the 4-2-3-1 formation that we play, then go and have a check out of the series and see it work in actual motion. You get to see the team on the pitch beating all sorts of opponents. But I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the series, or I'll see you in the next deep dive that we do. Bye bye for now.